Welcome to another episode of Room for a Podcast. Again, I am Brittany, and I have another amazing guest on today's episode, Coach Valj, aka the Instant Relief Life Coach. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. No complaints. I
Good.
can complain, but there's no point of complaining.
Right.
So I like the name the Instant Relief Life Coach. Where did that come from? Where'd you get that from?
Well, one thing, I changed my process. I used to coach for, and I still have some clients. May I maybe coach 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. But what I found as I continue to obviously grow in the industry, you don't need a lot of time to make significant shifts in your life. And
Mm-hmm.
so, one really good conversation, one good question, one moment can shift your life. And so, and what was happening is I was having clients, and in one conversation, they were like, "Oh, I got this," and going on. And I came to realize that if you shift it, instant relief, it sends that message. I can get this resolved, and it takes what's hard not so hard.
Yeah. That makes sense. That instant shift of the perspective makes a huge
Hmm.
difference versus holding on to something that you don't want or focusing on things that you don't want. You can't even move towards what you do want because you're still thinking about, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go, down this path. But then it's like it's a internal battle when you focusing on what you don't want, but trying to move towards what you do want. At least in
Yeah,
my
and
experience.
no, no, exactly right. And what happens is it seems basically I think about it. You take the you make the mountain the molehill. Because a lot of times, limiting beliefs and traumas and different situations, we think it takes years and years and years and years. And sometimes to get on that right, it's just like if you're driving a car. When you recognize you're going the wrong way, you don't sit there and wait and try to figure out, well, why would I go the wrong way? What led me to this? You just turn the car around. You
Yeah.
just turn the car around. And sometimes that's a lot of times is what we need. We just need to turn our car around.
Hmm. It's so simple, but sometimes we make it so complicated. Like literally, if we're driving on the road in the wrong direction, we just turn around. But in life, it gets so much more complicated. But it's a simple fix of just go the other direction.
Yeah, just
Do
let me
something
just
different.
let me just pull over here and turn around.
So, how long have you been in this industry of helping people turn their life around?
Well, it's funny. The other day I got a message from I'm 50 and I graduated high school in 1990. And so the other day I got a message from on Facebook from somebody from high school. I'll post my videos there. And she said, which I don't remember this. She said, "You remember when we were in like third and fourth grade, and you used to make us pay you a quarter for advice?" And I was like, "What? What kind of advice was I given in third grade?" And she was saying, remember when my mom and dad were doing this, and you were telling me to do this, and I used to give you my quarter, and it made me laugh. So, to answer your question, I guess I've been doing it for probably 40 years, but in actually in business practice, probably about 50, about 17 to 18 years.
Okay, that's cool. Let me adjust my camera. 1 second. There it is. Okay, so you've had it in your heart since you was little bitty youngin. You running around, and also entrepreneur because you're like, all right, give me a quarter. I'll give you some advice.
Yes, yes. Funny thing is, I don't like milk. I never liked dairy. And when I was growing up, my parents, we were poor, and so back in the day, if you wanted, your free lunch came with milk, but if you wanted like juice, you had to pay for it. And I remember asking my dad for juice money, and he was like, you just drink water, and so I was like, I'm gonna get my juice, and so apparently, I turn to which is what I tell my clients, use your STAG, your strengths, talents, abilities, and gifting, and solve a problem and create a win-win situation. If I solve your problem, you solve mine, you pay me, I pay you, and we both win. So
Okay.
apparently I was thinking that in second, third, fourth grade.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurs they always have it in them. Like for myself as a kid, I was in elementary school. My grandmother well, I think she asked what I want from the store. She used to work at Walmart.
Hmm.
And I just wanted a bag of Hershey Kisses, and I would go to school and sell them like 10 cent for like 10 for a dollar, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was probably like third grade, fourth grade,
Yeah.
maybe. And then even in high school, I would like babysit for my cousin. And instead of her giving me $20, I'm like, hey, can you go to the store with your food stamps and just buy me
Mm.
$40 worth of junk food, and I would go to school and sell it.
See?
But yeah, but I didn't, I just was like, hey, I need some extra money. I can't get a job because I play sports, and my mom not gonna let me work. So let me figure out how I can. If I just get $20, it's gonna be going like this. But how can I double it?
Oh, I love that.
So you said you've been in this industry for about 17 years.
Hmm.
Before, I mean, of course, when you was a kid, but like in the professional, more professional side for 17 years. So what happened? Like, was there like a shift in your life? Did something happen for you to realize, like, hey, there's a blueprint on how to live life, you know? And what gave you that shift in that perspective?
Oh, sure. Now, so I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I went away to college and messed up terribly. But I obviously eventually graduated, and I got my degree in finance, and then I got my MBA. And so I was working I was a stockbroker, and I was working for Merrill Lynch, big companies, and I hated it. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a stockbroker, and I had accomplished that. But I was always, even when I was in college, I wanted to major in psychology, but talking to people, and it was like, well, no, do finance, do money, you'll always have a job, if you do that. And so of course I did it, and I don't regret it. But what happened is, in that industry, I was miserable. I did a great job, but I was always asking the questions that led to more life satisfaction, even with my clients. We talk money, we get that squared away, but I always gravitated towards things in that realm. And eventually, I found out what a life coach is. I didn't even really know what that was. But once I found that out and I went through the certification, I realized that's the path. That's the path that I'd really been doing my whole life and didn't realize it. And then once, of course, you get the structural training and understanding and the processes, that's what it was. So the move to coaching came from a space of dissatisfaction with what I was currently doing. Though I was successful, I was dissatisfied. And then curiosity to find out what would present in me that space of feeling, yeah, I'm using my strengths, my talents, abilities, and I'm naturally inquisitive. I enjoy teaching, and it just made perfect sense for to move to that role of coaching. It wasn't an easy road. Uh, as you know, when you pursue something like that, it almost tests you. You kind of like put yourself in the fire, but you come out refined.
Yeah. So, when you got, how long were you in finance before you made that shift? And what did the dissatisfaction happen immediately, or was it like, oh, I want to be in finance, and then you get there, and then like a few years pass, and like, yeah, I don't want to do this.
It definitely wasn't immediately because once I graduated college, it took me 10 years to graduate college, in and out, dropping out and
Hmm.
what have you. But once I finally graduated and moved to Florida, where my brothers were here, and I was so excited about getting the job because ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a stockbroker. And so to get that job and pass the Series 7 and those things, it was very exciting. But it was short lived because, again, what happened was I was excited, but there was an inner yearning in me that I didn't know what it was. I just knew, again, going back from when I was a kid, I was always asking questions to help people get clarity around their life. And I was asking myself those questions, but I was answering them faster than I was answering them based on experience of, I got this degree, I need to use this degree versus what my heart was really saying. So
Hmm.
yeah, and I stayed in it for a long time, at least 10, 12 years, in different roles and different jobs. Cause I thought, well, maybe it was the company. And then you go somewhere else. But it wasn't the company. It didn't align with where I wanted to see my life.
Yeah, it makes sense. So I was in the Navy, and we you transfer every like 3 to 4 years.
Hmm.
And my first command, I'm like, man, I don't think this is what I really want to do, but I'm
Hmm.
not really financially set to like get out. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And like most of the senior leadership, they're like, oh, it's just this command. Once you get to a different command, you never know, it could be a lot better. And then I got to my next command, I'm like, I absolutely hated it, but it really forced me to like grow as a person,
Hmm.
develop my skills, and like hone in on shifting my perspective. And like, all right, what am I learning here? But after that, I'm like, you know what? I don't need to go to another command for 3, 4 more years to see that I just don't like it. It's just not
Yeah,
for me.
makes
Because
sense.
we,
It takes time. And we're grateful for that journey. But there's also gratitude and recognizing that take the good in the journey and then move to your
Mhm.
next destination.
Yeah, because some people, they'll go somewhere they don't like it, and then they'll just stay there. I'm like, well, this is what I got to do. Instead of thinking bigger, like, oh, what else can I do? Like, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? And they
Hmm.
just like sit and like, they just melt away. And I'm like, I can't. No, I got to do something else. Take a
Yeah,
chance on me. Um,
take a
so
chance on me.
so you decided, hey, this is not what I want to do. And then how was the road from, being in finance to becoming a coach, like learning the steps and the structure and all that stuff?
Well, it was, of course, very exciting. I took a course. It was a 6 month course where we had weekly live. At that time, that many years ago, I don't know if Zoom was around, but we did a conference call, and so each week we had like 2 hour lessons, and then we had our coaching things, and it was just I was so excited about it and happy about it. I knew it made perfect sense. At those same questions that I was learning were things that I was already doing, but this gave me the structure around it. So I knew I was in the right space. Of course, transition is hard. Well, let me rephrase that. Transition is different, and so though I was walking in my purpose, the money didn't line up, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's all. That can be the struggle. So in between doing that, I was still doing other things and finding my way and learning my way. But I was also honing my craft and understanding that this aligns with it. What happened is whenever I coach, I don't feel like I worked. There's that saying, if you find what you love, you won't work a day in your life. And that's how I was feeling, and that's how I feel now. So I knew I was on the path. But again, just like any other path, any path to greatness is gonna, or any path to greatness climbing up a mountain is gonna require a climb. And a climb
Mm-hmm.
means you got to get tired. Your legs are gonna hurt. You're gonna get frustrated. You gotta be honed and focused. You gotta have the view of the mountaintop in your heart when you're climbing. And so that it continues you forward. But I wouldn't, as they say, I wouldn't take nothing from my journey.
Yeah. So when you were learning about like the structure of life coaching and living in your purpose, were you also on the journey of like understanding manifestation, or did that come later on down the line?
No, it was around the same time. I'll tell you, uh, something happened in my 33rd year. I can't necessarily put a finger to it, but it was kind of like a shift. So let's see, that was 17 years ago. Just something in me, just kind of like, I don't know, I can't describe it, but I kind of had this kind of realization that it's bigger than these little circumstances and things. And that like I said, I can't tell you the exact day, but something happened once I turned 33. It's like 33 is my favorite number, and it's been my favorite number since I was a child. It was always when I played sports, I always picked 33. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think all my life I was anticipating this something happening in my 33rd year, and it happened. And so it just kind of opened my eyes to. So I started reading Neville Goddard and Florence Scovel Shinn and all these thought leaders, as a man thinketh. And it's like, oh, this is what it's about. This is what this is. And so as
Mm-hmm.
I started studying those things, a few years after that, I ran a law of attraction group here in Jacksonville, and where we would meet weekly or every other week and do things. We would just get together, talk about it, do processes. It wasn't so much coaching; it was just a meetup group. And
Yeah.
so again, during that time, I was it 33 kind of led me to really looking at manifestation, and I've been on that path ever since.
Okay. So for me, it was maybe 2 years ago. So I was already like seeking out personal development and understand like the blueprint because again, I grew up poor. The blueprint that's out there, like my family didn't have it. And some people were doing okay, but they didn't have the life that I wanted.
Mm,
And so I always had the thought like, man, like there has to be something more. Like what am I missing
mm,
out on? And I ended up reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, which
mm,
led to finding Jim Rohn's videos and then Tony Robbins and all these folks. So I'm watching the videos, but at the time, like, so I'm sober now, but at the time I wasn't sober. So
mm,
if I'm not working hard, grinding away, I'm at home, I'm drinking. So it was like I had no space to grow grow at all because I'm
mm,
spending my time working and drinking. So I
mm,
finally sober up and like things start to change because I have space to like receive things.
mm,
So again, seeking out like, okay, what am I doing? What can I do better? And then 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, so I'm 31 now, so maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I came across The Secret,
mm.
the movie The Secret. And although it doesn't have everything there in the movie, I took key points away from it and
Oh
then
yeah.
started to look up the people that were in the movie. So like Bob Proctor. And then I ended up watching his what is it called? Oh man, I can't think of it. But it's like a 6 or 7 part video from like
Hmm.
1970 or 1980. I can't think of the name of it right now, but ended up looking at Bob Proctor and then Lisa Nichols and
Hmm.
um a few other people. I think Michael
Yeah.
Beckwith. And I'm like, man, so this is the missing piece, you know? So
Oh, I
this
love that.
is so I started like, reading about them, watching their videos and like trying to apply it, but it still takes time. Like for myself, it took time for the paradigm shift because I had to
Mm,
like believe that this is how it is,
hmm.
and things aren't coincidences. Like if I want something and I'm ready to receive it, when the opportunity presents itself, I need to receive it.
Hmm.
It's not luck. It's these are the things
The
that I want,
sign.
the signs. And it was just, history from there. And I was able to like just bet on myself on this journey
Hmm.
that I'm currently on now instead of operating in fear and, staying employed by a company that I don't want to work for. But yeah, that
Hmm.
was my journey right there about 2, 3 years ago. But still for
That's
me, it took
awesome.
time for the paradigm shift. But
Yeah,
that
and and
Bob Proctor,
and that,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
I
go ahead.
love Bob Proctor. Rest in peace. The wonderful, wonderful teachings. And it's interesting because even though I'm 50 and I've been on this journey for a long time, it's still ever unfolding. Like 3 years ago, I I have a regular 9 to 5, but my regular 9 to 5 is a life coach. I work for a nonprofit organization and I coach women. And so just that transition previous to that, I worked, I had still have my coaching business, but I would do other little things to make sure that I supplement income. And so again, 3 years ago, I made a shift. I was like, well, I want a salaried life coach job so that way I can do that. That's steady income. And then I can, explode my income over here doing this. And so, again, you're ever evolving and shifting in this process. As Abraham said, you don't ever get it, you can't ever get it right and you don't ever get it done. So just relax and go with the flow.
Yeah. It's easier said than done, but once you finally like just all right, I I'm letting go. I'm just gonna like relax. It is a lot easier.
Yeah, and
But
it's definitely, I always say everything is easier said than done. It's easier to say I'm going to take a shower than to literally take my clothes off, turn the water on, get in there and do all those things. Everything is easier said than done. But once you get clarity around what you want, and you focus and hone in on it, the universe then conspires to bring little tiny steps to make the journey a little bit easier, or at the very least, let you know you're right on target. And again, you can always course correct. That's the one thing I love about just this journey called life. At any moment, you have the ability to course correct and make a shift. Again, you're driving in the wrong direction. You don't pull on the side of the road and beat yourself up for 2 hours or 2 days. Why did I turn left when I was supposed to turn right? You just turn the right way and course correct. And then you align your thoughts, words, actions, choices, and decisions with the new path.
Yeah.
And that's the work.
So I was yesterday I was interviewing this guy named Logan that I know, and he's currently on the pursuit of playing basketball at the highest level professionally.
Hmm.
He's like 23, but the past 2 years he had been like honing in on his craft and like saying this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do it until and he ended up
Hmm.
like running into certain people, and now he plays for like a professional team out in Detroit. It's not the Pistons, but it's still a professional team. And
Hmm.
then he's like meeting certain people that's like he's suddenly getting in these spaces with people who's going to help him along his journey. And we're like, yeah, that's
Yes.
not luck. That's like you want something, you prepare to receive it, and then you have these little God moments like, all right, are you really, or the universe, like, are you really ready to receive this opportunity? All right, let's see
Hmm.
what you do here. And it's just ironic that you're saying the same thing because it's so simple, but like so many people miss it. They miss it. So how do you like with your clients? Do you have like the uh key clients that you prefer to work with, or like are they in therapy? Have they never been to therapy? Like what about people who have like all this trauma and they can't have the breakthrough? How do you deal with
Well,
those clients?
those can be tough. I'm thinking back in the last, 15 years, most of the clients that I've worked with have already been in some form of therapy or open to it, which is great because it's easy for me to explain the difference between therapy and coaching. But as
Hmm.
far as trauma, I can, just briefly tell my story. I definitely have experienced trauma in my life. Again, I grew up, poor. My parents were both mom and dad. They were together and they were, together until they both passed away. So yes, I had my mother and father, but they were both alcoholics, codependent. And if you know anything about it, being in an environment of alcoholism, a lot of stuff slips by. Somebody's not on watch like they should. So there
Hmm.
was, sexual molestation that occurred and different things. So I have experienced the gamut of trauma, and so I kind of wear that as a badge of honor because I know if I can overcome those things, overcoming is possible. You know, everybody has their own path and their own time frame. So I don't want to tell somebody, oh, you should do that. No, I don't do anything like that because everybody's levels is different. But I say all of that just to remind people that, my life hasn't been this easy. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I've experienced a lot of things, but what I know for sure is one of the biggest shifts in my life was a simple agreement. I say agreements when I think about beliefs and what have you,
Hmm.
limiting beliefs or positive beliefs or what have you. I like to use the term agreement because if I can agree to something, then I just align myself with the agreement that I made. If we agree to go to a certain dinner place, then I can align myself with picking from that menu.
Hmm.
I don't have to
Yeah,
believe in the restaurant. I don't have to believe anything. I've just agreed to go to that restaurant. So because I'm going to that restaurant, then I look at that menu. To me, it simplifies it. As
it does.
you talk about beliefs, and it's like this big old thing, and you gotta go through. Well, when I was a child, and I still use the term belief, but for the most part, agreements. I think agreements is what makes the difference. And so the biggest changer for me was listening to Neville Goddard, and he kind of described this story. But the end result is what I came from that is 4 words that I really emphasize with my clients. A 4-word agreement. I get to decide. I get to decide. And if you get that in your spirit, like if you really get that and you agree to it and you believe it and you walk from that space, when those memories come up, when those situations come up and you meet it with, well, okay, I get to decide how I'm going to experience this experience. I didn't decide that it happened to me, but I get to decide what I'm going to do with it. And that puts you in the space of, okay, I take back ownership and power of how I'm going to experience whatever's going on because I get to decide. And if I can get my clients to that space, And that's usually one of the first few things we talk about. And if they're willing, you don't have to believe it that day, and you don't have to walk it out that day. But if I can get you in the space of the realm of I get to decide energy, then I know that you can create significant change in your life just like that. Because when you recognize you get to decide, it's not the victim mentality. It's not somebody did something to me. They. It's not they and they have all this power. It's not external validation. It's internal. And when it's internal, you can make this shift. You know, there's a proverb that I love. When there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm. And so
But it's powerful.
if this is knowing I get to decide, then I don't have that level of fear about things that come my way, because whatever comes my way, I get to decide how I'm going to experience it. And that is a shift.
I hope y'all caught that. This whole segment right here, because it's super powerful information. Super powerful information. I
I'm
was going to ask
passionate
you.
about that, so I'll talk about that forever.
I, listen, I understand when you have passion about something, you can talk about it all day long without paper and pen or slideshows. You just on it.
Yeah.
So as far I want to back up a little bit about like your upbringing, your trauma, and living with alcoholic parents or alcoholic household.
Hmm.
Um, how long did it take for you to like get to the point like I can decide how I want to live my life? And also did I know of course it probably negatively affected you, coming
Hmm.
up, but at what point did it stop negatively affecting your life and your
Sure.
emotions and your spirit?
Well, so as I said before, I was a first generation college student in my family. And so when I graduated high school, 3 months after I turned 17, I started school a year early. And so I was an excellent student, but I didn't have an environment that said, that really emphasized it. And so schoolwork was pretty easy. But what happened is after I turned 17, I knew, it's not that I knew that there was another way of living. I just knew that that didn't align with what I was feeling inside. And so I
Hmm.
was like, the best way to get out of this is to go to college. And so I filled out all the paperwork, FAFSA and all that stuff. And I went to college 3 or 4 hours away from home. And so, as I told you before, it took me 10 years to graduate, not because I was, not because college was hard or because I didn't understand, but because I had a mountain of trauma and belief systems that told me, who are you to be at college? Who are you
Hmm.
who were you to leave that and be the only one to leave that and then come over here and think, who are you to do that? And so the first 17, 18, 19, the first 2, 3 years in college, I drank every single day. I'm away from home. It's a military town. This was 1990, go for it had just started. And so all these I went to Austin Peay State University, which is right outside of Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Oh yeah,
Military.
are you from Kentucky or Tennessee?
I'm from Tennessee.
What part? I'm from
Um,
Memphis.
oh, I'm from Chattanooga.
Oh, cool. We might be related. I got family out there.
So then Chattanooga to Clarksville, and
Hmm.
then like I said, of course, Fort Campbell's right there next to Clarksville, and so I was away from home, and our parents, we didn't even have a telephone at the time. It kept getting disconnected, so I was really disconnected, literally from them. And so while I was away from them physically, I was with them from the space of the chaos. In other words, I escaped the chaos externally, but internally it was still with me.
Yeah.
And so, because, if you grow up in an alcoholic environment, it's chaos. And so I
Hmm.
sought chaos while I was at college, which meant I hung out with people that drank and did all these things. And I flunked out of college. So, and eventually I got back in, which I'll tell you is amazing. So from 1990, I graduated in 2000. I actually went to college 3.5 years. It took me 3.5 years to complete it, but it took 10 years to finish those 3.5 years because I
Yeah.
started, I got kicked out, dropped out, got back in, and all of these things. So, to answer your question, it was really a 10-year journey. Really, I guess I can say from 17 to maybe 27 of, well, yeah, really 20 years. But anyway, it took me that long to kind of put it together to recognize that their choices doesn't have to be mine. And again, it goes back
Mhm.
to the I get to decide. That's what they decided to do with their journey. I get to decide what to do with mine, and that came from a couple of things. Obviously being away from home. I played softball, so we used to travel. Uh, Acclimating myself with different people, different cultures, different environment. And again, remember, I'm still fighting this stuff. Self-sabotage, I mean, just all kind of stuff. But also during that time period, I was, I remember taking a psychology class that I loved, and that even during when I was out of school, I was still reading and doing different things. When I was doing factory work, because I dropped out of school, I was still reading and and doing those things. I was just doing the things that looked like what my parents' life looked like. Matter of fact, my dad used to work at a company where he wore a blue uniform, and one of the jobs I got when I dropped out of college was working at a factory where I wore a blue uniform. You know, and it just hit me one day. I think I was coming home and I kind of looked in the mirror and I was like, "Wow, you're your dad." And I said to myself, "Okay, what's that mean?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah, you work, you provide, you're a good person, but you're alcoholic. You achieve less than your potential." And again, self reflection. As I started asking myself that, I was like, "No, does that have to be me?" I asked myself, "Does that have to be me?" And I was like, "Well, no, it doesn't." And that little bitty window of asking that question, open up the possibilities. And I'll tell you this really, really quickly: how important, how powerful your purpose. I call it your goal, your God ordained assignments in life. I
Mhm.
say I'm a gold digger, and so how do those show up? When I messed up my financial aid and got put out of college, because I was back in and out drinking and doing all this stuff. I couldn't get back into college because like I said, I'd messed up my financial aid and I didn't have the money to pay for it. But I was working a night shift, wearing that uniform that my dad wore, and I still used to read the paper every day. And so one morning after work, I was reading the paper and I saw a little tiny ad. Same way when I was about 8 years old, I saw a little tiny ad that said stockbrokers wanted. Which planted that seed for me to be a stockbroker. I saw a little tiny ad that said something to the effect of free college for women. And I was like, what? And this is back in the day where it's newspaper. We didn't have
Mhm.
and so I saw it and I had a phone number and I called the phone number and it was a nonprofit organization um, um, that if you can't get back into college, maybe you messed up your financial aid. If you were to take an 8 week self-esteem course, they would pay for one semester of college. And I signed up for it and it was taught by a life coach. Think
Mm.
about this. At the time, I didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. A life coach working for a nonprofit. I'm in my early 20s. I messed up college. I took this self-esteem course. They paid for my semester of college. Of course, I made all A's because at this point I'd gotten older. I'd kind of released some of those things, and that's how I got back into college. I got back into college by a nonprofit who was a life coach in my 20s. And then fast forward, now I'm in my 50s and I do the exact same work. I help people that have messed up their financial aid, messed up whatever, and I teach self-esteem courses and different things. And part of that
Mhm.
process is helping people get themselves back into college. You're talking about full circle.
Mhm. It sounds like
Really
it.
powerful. Really powerful.
It's definitely a full circle. Um, yeah, I went to college. I went to TSU actually. I didn't graduate, but I went to TSU
Hmm.
in Nashville when I graduated high school because again, I'm like, I got to get away from this mess. So I went to college, but again, I wasn't like partying a lot, but I just didn't have like the drive and the
Mm,
self-sabotaging. I didn't think I don't know if I didn't think I was worthy enough to go to college, but I just didn't really, it wasn't for me. Like I
mm,
wasn't going to classes, I wasn't doing the homework. It was just I just started slowly flunking out. I would do just enough to stay there. And then I
mm,
ended up getting a job and moving off campus. And like
mm,
the money started coming in. I'm like, oh, like I go to class next Tuesday. I go to class Thursday. And then next thing you know, it's been like 3 weeks without of me not going to class,
mm,
and that's how it went for me. And I ended up joining the Navy. Still like in search of who am I? Like in search of
mm,
that. Like who am I? What do I? who like just basically who I am. But I didn't know at the time that that's what I was doing. I was just like on this journey of like, oh, I want to help people. I want to help people.
Mm,
I joined the Navy because when a disaster strikes, they send the Navy ships out to help these countries. They're not the ones
mm,
that's doing the fighting. And then I'm in the Navy. I'm just like, okay, this isn't for me either. Like, I want to do something else. This isn't for me either. Um, but the whole time, I just had this like this yearning of like wanting to help people. Because even
mm,
like in school, I would talk to my friends, like, "Oh, you're so wise," and like, I guess it's just common sense. And it was 6 of us in my household. Well, I'm number 3 out of 6, but
mm,
I would be like the counselor. So like if my brother
mm.
gets in trouble, I'm like, well, I don't think he should be on punishment for 4 weeks because he only did this because of XYZ. Like I'm like the mediator, you know. So
Mm,
I always had it in me, but it just took a while for me to really like embrace it. I'm still trying to
mm,
embrace it. Like what does it look like, and how can I fully, help people to like
mm,
the full extent, and while I'm learning at the same time, you know. But yeah, it's ironic that your story, I can relate a lot on your
mm,
for your story, you know. And then when I got out of the Navy, I went back to school, but
mm,
again, it was for computer science. So this is like a few months ago,
mm.
but it was only for the money. Like, oh, you know what? They make a lot of money in computer science, so let me just do that. But I absolutely hated it. I'm like, no, this is not for me. Like, what am I doing? You know.
Yeah,
But
I get that. It's the funny. I went back to school and got my MBA, and I was like, for what? Even now, I'm like, why'd you do that? Like that's the wild. And I knew again at that time it was more of again, still chasing significance, still chasing a old story, a fear. I was living an old story, so I could say, well, look, you know, I grew up from this and this, and now I have an MBA. You know, as opposed to what aligns with my goal, again, my God ordained assignments in life. What is the next path that uses my strengths, talents, abilities, and gifting so that I can end my day feeling like I haven't worked, though I worked, 12, 13 hours. Matter of fact, worked and lost track of time because I'm doing things that align with my purpose, that align with my joy, that align with my spirit, that align with, again, my unique strengths, talents, abilities, and gifting. At the time, I was just chasing so I can be able to introduce myself or put letters at the end of my name. Again, I
mhm,
was looking for external validation, or as opposed to using what internally was gifted to me and then allowing that to be the driver as opposed to, again, external fleeting validation, because one day they're proud of you with the MBA and the next day they're like, oh, you ain't nothing.
yeah, I can relate. It's like looking for that self-worth in external things, and that
Exactly.
value. It's like it sounds good because you come from nothing, and oh, you're in the Navy, or oh, you have an MBA,
Yep.
oh, you did
Yep.
computer science. That's a rigorous course study. You did
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
then but it being like so unfulfilling that it's like just deteriorating your soul, and it's like, okay, let me get my self-worth from my creator, and
Yes.
and work in my purpose, and I had to learn that. But again, it wasn't overnight.
Yeah,
It wasn't overnight.
it's definitely not overnight, but it comes from asking yourself, well, let me say it a different way. It comes from honoring that little voice within that is asking you questions. You know,
Mhm,
when you get at the end of the day, when you're at the end of the day at work, when you're tired and you're frustrated and you're just kind of looking around, or on your drive home and you're just kind of looking around, and something in you was like, is this the best? Is this my best? Don't
mhm,
ignore that. Don't quiet it with food. Don't quiet it with alcohol. Don't quiet it with sex. Don't quiet it. Just be willing to, and don't judge it. Just be willing to entertain it a little bit. Just be willing to entertain it, and let it unfold. And the more you entertain it and let it unfold, again, you'll see clues of what aligns with, again, your highest self. You'll see them, but the key is that don't dull that voice out. You don't have to have all the answers the first time it asks the question. Sometimes the answer is just to be still, turn the radio down, turn it that, turn just be still and listen and allow. And yes, that can be difficult because we're so used to, you know, external. But if you just, the biggest practice that you can learn if you're feeling lost or if you're feeling disappointed or disgusted with your current environment, just be still and listen. Make it an active practice. Get up in the morning, even when you're getting ready to go to work, and just ask yourself, what would the best me operating in my best look like, sound like, feel like? What would I be getting ready to do this morning if I was operating in my higher self? And be still. The answer will it might unfold while you're eating lunch. You might have an
Hmm.
idea or something. Just be still and allow that. That's the best path you can take if you're in a space of disappointment or disgust or frustration.
Definitely, because you have to like ask once you ask yourself that question, your brain, starts to work.
Mm-hmm.
One, your brain starts to work looking for answers, and then you're able to see opportunities that might be the answer to your question. The universe will show you, it might come through other people or through books or videos. Like for you,
Or a
you
little ad in
you
the
saw
paper.
y'all gonna say you saw the little ad in the paper, but you asked the question at some point before that, and then you were able to
Exactly.
like zoom in, like, oh, go back to school for women, free college. Let me check this out. But if you had not
Yeah.
asked that question, you would have missed that. It wouldn't have even, yeah, you wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I remember I was looking at the paper, looking at the for jobs, another job that didn't align with, that would have just made me also feel miserable. But you're exactly right. That's why it's so important. Tony Robbins said the quality of your life is largely determined by the quality of the questions that you ask yourself. And so these kind of questions, instead of saying, I hate this job. Why did I choose this job? Or, ask yourself different questions. I would say this, ask yourself questions that lead your feet to the space that you want to inhabit. So if you say,
Mm-hmm.
what would me operating in my highest self, what would I be doing right now? What would I be saying? Who would I be around? Again, just ask yourself those kind of questions because they ultimately lead to the space that you want your feet to inhabit. And so when you ask yourself those questions, it's not so much of you coming up with an answer right now. You're not forcing it. Again, you're creating, I call it the realm of receiving. You're placing your space in the realm of receiving and allowing the universe to bring forth and God to bring forth the answers to those questions. But just as you said, if you're asking whatever question you're asking, the answers are gonna present themselves. So if you ask yourself, why am I so miserable? You're gonna see the signs of misery, and it's gonna keep you in misery. But if you ask yourself and acknowledge, hey, I'm feeling miserable right now. What would bring me joy? And you ask
Mm-hmm.
that question, you'll start seeing the examples of joy. And you may find joy in the space that you're in. It may be a perspective shift. I had a client that she lives in Lithuania and she really wasn't happy in what she was doing. But after we had a conversation, she recognized, she's really in a top, especially in that environment and in that, in the environment that she's in, what she does is actually an incredible, wonderful job, highly paid job. And just like that, she went from I can't stand this job to, oh my God, I see how this job is birthing the next opportunity because I have so much free time and I have this and I have that. And so sometimes it may not mean that you quit immediately and put yourself in peril. But it may mean that you look at the job differently or in relationship. I use job because a lot of times manifestation, we're talking about money, but I'm really talking about overall life abundance and satisfaction. Could be your relationship, could be whatever. When you look at it differently, as Wayne Dwyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you look at them from a different perspective and you ask those quality questions, you are allowing that voice to be higher, that voice to have a volume higher than the voice of complaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when I came across what's his name, Jim Rohn, back in 2019, no, I'm sorry, September 2015, and I absolutely hated my job in the Navy at the time because it was like a lot of grunt work. I didn't have an actual rate. It was just like it's called undesignated seaman. So I was like doing all the grunt work, like moving chains
Mm-hmm.
around, all this stuff like that. And I absolutely, I was like, I signed up for this. Like now I can't even leave, even though I'm always like unreliable and flaky. But now I have this contract, so I can't just up and quit. I can't just up and leave.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like, if you work hard on yourself and doing your job, things will change. So I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
I do complain a lot. I am flaky. I do, half-ass job, and I'm like barely on time. Like I'm 1 minute before I get there, 1 minute before quarters. So
Mhm.
I started getting like 15, 20 minutes early. My uniform good to go. Even though I might have did a dirty job yesterday, I'm gonna have a fresh uniform, boots shiny. Even though they're gonna get dirty
Mhm.
again the day of, shine my boots. Be showing initiative and not complaining, like taking
Mm.
pride in the job, and then that developed me as a person because I wasn't raised with that type of work ethic. It was like just go to
Mhm.
work, pay your bills, like survive, just barely making it. But me putting effort into myself, into my work ethic, into my personality, it changed like my career, like just skyrocketed from that point,
Mhm.
but it also developed me as a person. And then so that part was set, and I got to my next command. Yeah, I have this good work ethic, but I don't really want to be there. So then it like I was forced to like grow emotionally and spiritually, and I'm like, okay, it all makes sense. It's like it was I was put there for a reason to become who I am today. But when I
Mhm.
was in it at the time, I was like, oh, all right, now what do I have to do? But looking back, like the journey was like I was placed in each spot to learn and to
Yeah,
develop and to
I love
and to
that.
grow.
Yeah, you made a
It's
decision. You made a decision. You recognized that the path you were on didn't align. The physical path of being doing that kind of work didn't align, but the also how you were experiencing that type of work. Here's the thing, you saw a problem and a predicament. The problem was I don't like this stuff, but the predicament was I have a contract. So whether I like it or not, I have to fulfill the contract. See,
mhm,
here's what happens a lot of times. The author that writes all these leadership books, John Maxwell, he describes the difference between a problem and a predicament. Problem has a solution, you can change and shift it. Predicament means there's nothing you can do about it, but you can change how you experience it. And so, because you were
mm,
contractually obligated to serve out, or you go to prison, or I assume, you know,
yeah,
that was a predicament. You couldn't change. You couldn't say I quit. You had to stay in it to fulfill your contract. So you couldn't change that, but you could change how you chose to experience it. And
mm,
that made all the difference. So when people say I'm stuck, I'm helpless, I'm hopeless, there's nothing I can do, you know, there's always something that you can do, in the sense that you can change how you're going to experience the situation that you're in. And it starts with, again, is it a problem or a predicament? Can you quit? Yeah, I could quit, but I'd be homeless, or I wouldn't have any money. Okay, then don't quit. don't
yeah,
don't don't take the and forgive me, but don't take the step. I'm going to step out on faith. I always kind of cringe with that, because even in the Bible, God has plans. Yeah, God will tell somebody to do something, but there's a plan involved. So if the answer can't always be I'm just going to quit, because then you've just exchanged one trouble for another. You had trouble
mhm,
that you hated the job, maybe you hated the people, but you were paying your bills. Now you don't have to deal with the people, but you can't pay your bills. So you just exchange one trouble for another. And so if you recognize it and you create a plan and then you work the plan, then you can go to work and again know that you get to experience. And again, I use work, but any situation, you get to decide how you're going to experience the experience that presents itself in front of you. You get to decide that. And if you recognize that, even if the work environment is terrible, your boss is terrible, the coworkers are terrible, you get to decide how you're going to experience it. you know and when you
mhm,
recognize that you have that much power, that then opens up the space for the next thing to unfold. You start, like you said, you start showing up, dressing like the part that you want, or you
mhm,
start getting there early and you have a good attitude. Somebody in three departments over may have to come over to do something, and you stand out and they see you. Then that births your opportunity to go to that next level. You see,
mhm,
we shoot ourselves in the foot by allowing circumstances to dictate how we show up, as opposed to allowing our decision to decide how we're going to show up. My decision is who I am and how I am, regardless of the
mhm.
circumstance.
So how do you like your clients that come to you about money? Just say they, come from a background where they have a toxic relationship with finances. How do you help them shift the perspective and being able to receive, you know, having
Mhm.
abundance of money, and also like the clients who self-sabotage? How do you help them shift the self-sabotage into working in their purpose, or like with their intentions? They're just being better with being intentional versus constantly self-sabotaging. Those are two questions, but
No, it's okay.
yeah.
They're married. um, it's really, of course, so many years experience being a coach. I hear what is not said. Oftentimes when I'm sitting with a client, I always have a piece of paper and I write down words that I hear on. Again, you start off with good questions. Good questions make a big difference. Where do you work? What do you like about it? Or, what led you to that? Just like you asked me when, starting off, when you ask those questions, and when you are trained to listen to spoken and unspoken, you can point out certain things. If you hear someone always reverting to something from the past, constantly, well, when mom did this or so and so did this, then I can hear that and go down that path of asking questions. And like I said, I always try to steer towards, do you realize that you get to decide how to experience, whatever it is that you're experiencing? I'm telling you, that's like the one question that really shifts things. Because if you say, "Well, no, I don't get to decide," then I said, "Well, who does get to decide? Who's deciding? Who decided that you're going to work that job? Who decided that you're going to be in that relationship? Who decided that you're going to live in the place that you live? Who decided when you get up in the morning? Who decides these things?" And when you start asking those kind of questions, and eventually you start saying, "Well, okay, I'm deciding that, but but then kind of reveals that limiting belief, or that agreement, or that space or opportunity for growth." And so again, it's just a lot of listening, asking questions and listening. And I think about it this way, that everybody has the answers that they need, but sometimes you just need questions. Like, I'm not, if we're a puzzle, my clients have all the puzzle pieces. I didn't come along and say, "Oh, you were missing, you're trying to put together a puzzle and here I am giving you the piece." You got all the pieces. All we're
Hmm.
doing is taking a step back. It's kind of like when you dump the puzzle out, all these pieces together, and the questions that I ask starts helping you put the end pieces together. And then, the more things start putting the middle pieces, and before you know it, you have a full picture. uh, I didn't give you anything. You already had it.
Hmm.
I just knew to ask certain questions. And so 99% of my work is just asking questions, listening, and connecting the dots so you can see, where you have taken the path that didn't align with what you wanted or what you thought you needed or deserved. And now you can course correct. Because I think about systems. I try to help people align their system, which is thoughts, words, actions, choices, feelings, and decisions, with whatever decision you made. So if we can get all these on the same page, you're going to achieve success, plain and simple.
Mm. I'm gonna have to connect you with my best friend. She's stationed in Jacksonville, and I
Hmm.
keep telling her like you should like get a coach, like get a therapy and get a coach. Tiana, no, I'm talking about her. I'm like get a coach, and now you're in Jacksonville too, so it won't even have to be like over the phone or virtual. Like maybe if you had to have a meetup or something.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah,
it's funny. You get to decide. But I like
yeah.
that.
I get to
So
decide, plain and
so now
simple.
you work with for a nonprofit, and you coach women or
Mhm.
people to go back to school. Is that only to go back to college, or just in general, like self-esteem and stuff like
No,
that?
it's in general. We always, the goal is to create economic power, or the goal really is to because it's low income, no, to low income women, single mothers. So
Mhm.
the actual goal is to become self-sufficient. And usually sometimes a pathway to self-sufficiency is a career certification, you know, something that takes you from, kind of sporadic work to something where it builds a career, you know.
Mhm.
So those kind of things. I use school as an example because, and certifications as an example, because sometimes that's the quickest lift out of sporadic poverty. If you make, if you're a waitress somewhere and you're making, minimum wage, and maybe you become a med tech or you become a CNA or something, and you're making 14. That's a pathway and that's a start. And
Mm-hmm.
then you get insurance and you get those things, and then you go to the next level. And so that's the ultimate goal, to create. But you have to do that. To do that, again, you got to unwire some beliefs and traumas and different things. But yeah, so that's my full-time job, and that's very different clientele than I work with in my in my business, because these are, like I said, no to low to no income, that are really just in trauma, trying to survive,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to create a space for themselves and their kids where they can pay for their own food and different things. So
Yeah, because
it's
most times
interesting.
it's like in that space, certain needs aren't being met. So it's hard to get out of survival mode when you're worried about needs being met. And you can try to manifest something, but if there's like supposed pieces got to be there to be able to receive it, you know.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
think about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy. And at the bottom, at the top of the hierarchy is self-actualization. Some of the things that I talk about: living in your strengths, talents, abilities, and gifting. Living on assignment. Well, I can't have a conversation with anybody about self-actualization when their stomach is growling, when they haven't had
mm-hmm,
anything to eat, or in their home environment isn't safe. So again, you have to go through the hierarchy. I can't talk to you. Then they'll feel like, anybody will feel like you're being talked down to. So if I'm up here
mm-hmm,
and I'm trying, I can't. I always say I can't have a top of the mountain conversation while you're climbing the mountain. If I gotta meet you where you are. And one of the things that I really love about what I do is it again, it's such a shift from my clients for my business versus my clients for work. Two completely different conversations. But it is really powerful, because it keeps me, because sometimes I can get on this, up here, and it keeps me grounded, and reminds me of what I went through, and where I am now. And so, like you said, you really have to, you can't, and this is why a lot of times people can't hear you, because they're in survival mode, and you can't talk
mm-hmm,
about thriving. I mean, I can't talk to you about saving money in your 401k if you literally cannot pay your light bill. Like,
mm-hmm.
that sounds crazy, you know? And
Yeah.
so you have to meet people where they are. It really teaches me, and reminds me to meet people where you are, meet you where you are. And then, we rise up the ranks together.
Okay. And so what is your one-on-one coaching look like? Do you have coaching packages or mostly like the one-on-one from your website?
I have I don't have coaching packages. I still have some clients that I've grandfathered in, that I've coached for years, and we stay. But I took this, and I've known this for years. I'm a project person, which means there's this book called Motivational DNA, it has a quiz in it that I'd taken years ago, and you answer. It's kind of like your love languages. You answer those questions, and it'll say this is your profile. And so my strength is projects, short-term projects, where we get in and we make significant impact, ask a lot of questions, build a plan, work the plan. That's kind of my philosophy. Ask a lot of questions, get clarity, build a plan that leads to your desired end result, work the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very simple. And so I don't do packages like, okay, we'll work together for 3 months or 6 months, because it doesn't align with my strengths. My
Mm-hmm.
strengths are, I like somebody. That's why I have one-to-one sessions. Anytime you want to talk about something, for you to hit that button and pay me, you're in a position where you're ready for change. It's like,
Yeah.
every time I talk to somebody, I know they're hungry. It's not like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, every 2 weeks or every month we talk, and maybe you don't have anything to talk about at that time, but because every 2 weeks, that doesn't align so much with my strengths. But and that's why I say instant relief coach, because maybe one session is all you need. Maybe after that one session, and we got clarity around it, we found out that, because you do a lot in one session, you got clarity around what's bugging you, because you came to me with the pain. We got crystal clear on it. We saw the thought patterns that kept you in that space. We uncovered those thought patterns. We created new thought patterns, new processes. You're left with that. Now you do the work. Now, if you want to come back in 2 weeks and say, okay, because I'll usually say, okay, for the next month or 21 days, do this and this because it tackles this. Then after those
Mm-hmm.
21 days, you want to come back and say, okay, I did it. Here's where I am. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. Here's what shifted. Yeah, we can always do that. So you're going to get the absolute ultimate value because you come to me when you're in a space where you need the help, and I don't have to convince you because you bought a 6-month package.
Yeah, it makes sense. I don't like long projects either, you know.
I don't.
I get bored. I'm like, oh man, not this again.
No, I really don't. I like impact, and I also don't like talking about stuff. I don't generally like talking about the same thing over and over and over and over and over, and not moving into progress. If you
Hmm.
have a coaching session with me, at the end of it, there's an action plan, and then this is the part where I get to decide. You showed me a problem. We came up with a solution. You've entered in the space of what your life would feel like, sound like, look like, taste like when that is resolved. You're gung ho about it. You feel it, and now here's the action steps that you have to do. And it's usually always a mindset shift. That first thing is just, it may be affirmations, it may be, whatever it is, but it's usually just a mindset shift. But when you start doing that, then you start seeing those changes. Like I have this workbook, kind of like self-coaching, but it's a 30-day workbook where we tackle 5 non-negotiable I ams. And so it's 5 of them. And each day you do something that aligns with that I am. So the I ams are: I am worthy, I am loved, I am ready, I am safe, and I am powerful. Because I believe if you walk in the space of knowing those and you do not negotiate those, your life will ultimately change and shift. The I am ready for me, let me just tell you this. The I am ready. I'm 50, and so I'm not necessarily really tech savvy, but
Hmm.
I started TikTok last year at 49, and I'd had Instagram for years, but I really got focused the last 30 to 45 days. But
Hmm.
I kept telling myself, well, no, you got to do this technology stuff. And so the 5 non-negotiables, I did it for myself for 30 days, where, like I said, each day you take one of those and you ask, it's self-reflection questions, and you have to show evidence to yourself that you've done something to indicate that you're ready or that you're loved or that you're worthy. And so by the time I did that, one of the things that came out of it when I started TikTok was do a 30-day challenge where I do a video every single day for 30 days. And I'd written this book on pep talks. So I said, make it real easy. Again, work the plan, make a plan, work the plan. So
Hmm.
I said, okay, take your book out, so you don't have to try to figure out what you're going to do on your TikTok. Just take your pep talk book, set record, read the pep talk, and talk about it. So I did that every day for 30 days to build confidence in front of the camera, to build tech skills of editing and all those things. But I made it as easy as possible because I was doing, and I won't just read. I read it, but I also add my inflection, as you could tell.
Yeah, I noticed. They're good
And so,
videos too. Super helpful.
and so as I did that for those 30 days, of course, I I I showed myself by affirming in my mindset that I am ready, and I met my words got met with my feet doing an action. Now when things come up, my mind instantly goes, well, okay, you're ready. Just make a plan, work the plan. And I'm like, okay, so then I can make a plan, and I'll sit down and say, okay, well, I could do this, and this. And I'm not fighting with, I don't know if you can, because I've already affirmed that I'm safe. So I don't have to, what if they say something? What if I'm safe? It's okay. I'm safe along the journey. What if this, I'm worthy of it. I'm worthy of the benefits of doing so. I'm loved. I'm powerful. And so I don't negotiate those things. So because
Hmm.
and when I say negotiate, I don't mean what's external. I mean internal. I'm not negotiating if I'm worthy of the success that I receive. I know I'm worthy of it. So it doesn't surprise me, if something presents itself, a check or a client. It doesn't surprise me. I've affirmed that I'm worthy of it because I'm living on assignment. And so
Mm.
that little five non-negotiables has been so powerful. And I have a Facebook group, the five non-negotiables. It's a workbook that people can buy and do it on their own. But I also put things in the Facebook group, things that I've learned along the journey, and it's a game changer. Just think about the next time you decide you want to do something and your mind goes, I don't know, I don't know. But then you have a higher voice that says, no, you're ready, you're worthy, you're powerful, you're safe to do it, and let's get it done. It shifts you.
Mm. How do people get in the Facebook group? Do they have to get the workbook first? And where can people find the workbook as well?
On my TikTok as well as Instagram, there's a link in my bio, and you can the workbook is there as well as the Facebook group. So you can just click the link and it'll take you to either one of those things.
I would ask you, is there anything else you would like to close out for our listeners? But you've packed so much information and knowledge in this interview, like so much information. Is there anything else you could think of that you would love to leave our viewers with, like something to like simmer, think about it for a week or two.
Yeah, I would just like to really and again, like I said, I can speak from many things that have happened in my life, but the number one thing is have that come to Jesus moment with yourself. Look at your life and ask yourself, is this my high, am I operating in my highest self? No judgment, radical self-compassion, love yourself, but really ask yourself that. And if the answer is no, I've kind of been settling or have been doing this, just take some time and go look in the mirror and in a beautiful, warm, kind, generous way, say to yourself, well, I get to decide how I'm going to experience the next chapters of my life. And I just want to leave you with knowing that you get to decide. Again, you didn't decide the family you were born in. You didn't decide the circumstances and situations, but you always get to decide how you're going to experience them. And so if you recognize and know that and live that, your life will change. And I'm not talking about in 3 years. I'm talking about tonight. If you know that you get to decide. And that's my whole philosophy of coaching summed up in 4 words, and my life philosophy. So if I could leave the listeners with anything, I just want to remind you that you get to decide.
Yeah, I heard that now. Y'all get to decide. So where can they find you? Like, your website, Facebook, TikTok. Do you wanna I'm gonna put it in the show notes as well so they can like go look at it. But if you want to tell them where they can find you, like a conversation.
You like you said on TikTok or on Instagram or on Facebook, it's all Coach Valj. So if you just go in the search bar, search Coach Valj, you'll you'll see my signature headbands there, and those are I don't use a traditional website. I got rid of all that stuff. I streamlined, very simple, because everybody's on social media anyway. So all my information is on social media. Find me there, and I tell this to everybody. You all can slide in my DMs. I answer a lot of questions in direct message. So don't feel like you have to, and this is the truth because I'm living on assignment. You know, you can always send me a message and say, hey, I'm working through this, or can you do a video about this? And, I'm very open and willing and excited when I get messages like that. So, but on Instagram and on Facebook and on like I said, I have a Facebook group, but and also on TikTok. Just find me there, Coach Valj. You'll see me pop up, and make sure you like, follow, and DM me, and I'll be there for you.
Yeah, I heard that slide in those DMs. If you got a question, you need some help with something.
Yeah.
If you can't
Don't sit
afford the
in pain.
$77,
Don't
you
yeah.
know,
Don't sit in pain. Don't sit in pain unnecessarily. Don't sit in problems unnecessarily.
all right, y'all. If y'all really enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to all your people. Let everyone know about Room for a Podcast. I'm trying to change lives, help you make room for growth. And that's about it. And we are out.